Have you ever beheld how the world begins to align when you cease to please? When you abandon the pursuit of others' approval, a silent transformation stirs within you. It is not sorcery, it is liberation. Friedrich Nietzsche, that seeker of unyielding truths, declared that the greatest prison of humanity lies not in iron bars but in the ceaseless craving for acceptance. So long as you live for the gaze of others, you shall never know the fire of your own strength. For life does not smile upon the obedient. It bows before the bold. From your earliest days you were taught to be good, kind, and courteous, to fit within the mold, to hush your voice, to please. But Nietzsche, with the audacity of one who glimpsed a brutal truth, shatters this doctrine. The morality of the masses is forged not to free but to fetter. When you dare to question these chains, the world first regards you with bewilderment, then with reverence, for none can bind a soul that no longer seeks to be owned. There comes a moment of rupture, a sacred instant, when you gaze upon the world and grow weary of pretense, of seeking, of shrinking. There in that moment, all begins, when you cease to care whether others judge, reject, or mock you. Nietzsche named this the transvaluation of values, the hour when you forge your own principles and cast off the whip of the herd. In that awakening, the impossible bows before your presence. Yet this awakening demands a price. It requires you to relinquish the need to be loved at every turn, to face the solitude, the unease, the silence that follows when the clamor of applause fades. And still, you must press forward. For as Nietzsche would proclaim, the pain of solitude is but a whisper compared to the agony of living a life that is not your own. In the moment you grasp this, freedom begins to take form. To cease caring is not coldness. It is maturity. It is the silent cry of one weary of living for others. In that silence, fear falls mute, and authenticity speaks. Then you come to see that, to become who you truly are, you must disappoint many. But in that very act, all begins to fall into place. The pursuit of approval is among the greatest traps of existence. Nietzsche saw it as a symptom of the spirit's decay, a surrender to the morality of the herd. To live in constant need of pleasing is to forsake your own individuality. This severance comes at a steep cost. The loss of authenticity, courage, and the creative power that dwells within every soul. The German philosopher decried the falsehood of virtues imposed by society. For Nietzsche, these virtues were not expressions of greatness, but of weakness, moral disguises crafted to tame instinct, to curb desire, to render all equal, predictable, and harmless. And what is the desire to please but a veiled form of fear? Fear of rejection, of solitude, of failure. Fear of being who you are without filter or compromise. When you endlessly seek external approval, you cease to be the author of your own life, becoming instead a pawn in another's game, a puppet chasing applause. Nietzsche proposed the contrary: to become the sculptor of your own existence, to shape your life as a living work of art. No masterpiece was ever crafted to be understood by all. The truer your path, the more misunderstood you shall be, and therein lies freedom. The great paradox is this: when you renounce the need for acceptance, you begin to draw true respect, not the respect born of masks, but that which rises from the silent admiration of those who behold courage unveiled. Nietzsche saw in this the manifestation of the will to power, the vital impulse that drives us to surpass ourselves, to transcend our limits, and to reject all forms of submission. Only those who truly live are those who refuse to dwell under command. To cast aside the need for approval is not arrogance or indifference. It is an unyielding commitment to your own truth. It is to gaze into the mirror and recognize yourself as whole, even when the world refuses to see you. Nietzsche believed few possess this strength, but those who do become unstoppable. For when you cease to care for acceptance, you begin to act from a place of profound power. At the heart of every human soul beats an untamed creative force, the will to power. Unlike the lust for external dominion, this is not a desire to rule others but to master oneself. It is the impulse of growth, the instinct of becoming, the vital energy that propels us beyond who we are today. Yet this power lies dormant, so long as we remain ensnared by others' expectations. Only when we break free from the need to please does this inner force begin to rise. Most live passively, obeying invisible mandates, reciting beliefs they never chose. Nietzsche called this the morality of slaves. A code built to keep the strong in check and the weak comfortable. True transformation begins when you question this morality, when you cease to care for the good and evil imposed from without, and begin to forge your own values, rooted in the truth of lived experience. This is the point of rupture where the authentic individual is born. To transvalue is to invert meanings, to transform what was once deemed weakness into strength, defeat into learning, error into a legitimate expression of life. When you cease to heed labels and judgments, you begin to see the world through your own eyes. Nietzsche saw this as the birth of the free spirit, one who needs no one's permission to exist fully. What the world calls arrogance, he called spiritual health. This liberation is not without pain. You must slay old versions of yourself. You must endure solitude, face the void, bear the silence. Yet it is in this barren ground that true strength takes root. Nietzsche likened this to climbing a mountain, a solitary, arduous journey, yet necessary. Each step upward is an act of courage, the bravery to abandon the known and risk being yourself, even when the world declares you wrong. The will to power is what makes us creators, not mere products. It lifts us from mediocrity to greatness. But to claim it, you must renounce the illusion of control, the fear of rejection, the need for consensus. Nietzsche believed that only those who dare to transform their lives into an affirmation of self truly live. And this happens only when you cease to live for others and begin to live for yourself. For Nietzsche, solitude was not a punishment but a blessing in disguise. He saw it as the crucible where the spirit is purified, where the soul gathers itself, where the will to power grows strong, unmarred by the world's distractions. Yet this solitude is not gentle. It is raw, silent, at times devastating. Still, it is in this absence of applause and opinions that the true self begins to emerge. No authentic awakening comes without the silence only solitude can offer. Most fear being alone, equating it with failure, abandonment, or insignificance. Nietzsche, in contrast, saw solitude as the cradle of the Übermensch, the one who overcomes oneself and becomes master of their existence. The world, swayed by the herd's mentality, celebrates belonging, approval, and acceptance as trophies. But the higher spirit knows that to find their path, they must first step away from the crowd and tread unmarked trails. There comes a moment in the journey of every awakened soul when they realize no one will come to save them. That the answers they seek lie not in others but in a direct confrontation with themselves. This confrontation is possible only in solitude. Nietzsche called this becoming who you are, a simple phrase concealing a brutal process. To face your own abysses, to question inherited beliefs, to tear away constructed masks requires courage born in silence. In solitude, too, the true weight of words, gestures, and intentions is revealed. Far from the noise of society, you hear the sound of what truly matters and discover that many bonds you nurtured were rooted in convenience, not truth. Nietzsche warned, "Life is too short to be small." Solitude, however uncomfortable, expands life by stripping away the superfluous. It forces you to face the essential, and the essential is ever transformative. Solitude is not the end of the path, but the beginning of transfiguration. Only those who can bear to stand alone are ready to stand with the world without depending on it. Imagine, for a moment, that all you experience, every gesture, every word, every thought, must repeat infinitely the same pain, the same errors, the same silences. This is the provocation of Nietzsche's eternal return, a concept that challenges not only logic, but the very essence of morality and existence. It asks not merely what you would do with your life, but whether you could love your life enough to live it again, eternally, unchanged. Far from a poetic metaphor, this thought is a trial by fire. Nietzsche believed that envisioning this infinite repetition compels us to live with radical attention. Each decision ceases to be trivial, each moment no longer disposable. For all you choose now, courage or cowardice, love or fear, conformity or overcoming, will return to you countless times. The eternal return demands you face life with profound responsibility, as if every moment were eternal, for in a way it is. For many, this idea is terrifying. Who would wish to relive their pain, their failures, their anguish? Yet Nietzsche sought not to torment, but to liberate. When you live as if all returns, when you embrace each moment as singular and eternal, you cease to squander your life on trivialities, resentments, or false priorities. You rise at last to live with greatness. The eternal return is the antithesis of regret. It is an invitation to amor fati, the love of fate. Nietzsche teaches that only those who embrace every part of their story, shadows included, are truly free. It is not about denying suffering, but accepting it as an inseparable part of the path that shapes you. When you say yes not only to life's joys, but also to its tragedies, something shifts within you. The tragic spirit is born, finding strength in pain and meaning in chaos. To live under the gaze of the eternal return is to abandon the role of victim and seize agency. It is to cease blaming the world, others, or the past, and instead act as if each choice were an eternal vow, for in truth it is. Nietzsche knew that only those who face this idea head-on can taste true freedom, not the illusory freedom of doing what you want, but the supreme freedom of wanting what you do, to live so boldly that every moment is worthy of eternal repetition. For Nietzsche, life is not driven by the pursuit of comfort or security, but by something far deeper, the will to power. This is not a desire for political or material dominion, but the essential impulse of existence, the force that urges us to grow, to affirm ourselves, to create meaning in the face of absurdity. While many seek to avoid pain and minimize risk, the vital spirit yearns to expand, even if it means descending into chaos. This force distinguishes those who live authentically from those who hide behind conformity. The will to power calls us to step beyond our comfort, to confront our limits. Nietzsche saw this not as a gentle process but as a daily battle, a clash with inner resistance, inherited fears, and the norms of a society that rewards obedience. To be strong for Nietzsche is not to dominate others but to resist the temptation to betray oneself. This impulse demands brutal honesty. Ask yourself, without masks, what am I avoiding? When have I diminished myself to be accepted? How often have I suppressed my power to avoid displeasure or judgment? Nietzsche knew that the human being is often their own worst jailer. No prison is more effective than one built with the invisible chains of fear, guilt, and modesty. The will to power breaks these chains, not gently, but with creative fury. This transformation is not without pain. It demands the burning of old selves, sacrifice, solitude, and the courage to bear the weight of your own freedom. Yet it is here that the true brilliance of being emerges. Nietzsche believed that pain is not the enemy, but the raw material that compels us to recreate ourselves. In doing so, life ceases to be something we merely endure and becomes something we shape with our own hands, our own strength. When you connect with your will to power, everything changes. You cease to ask, "What do others think of me?" and begin to ask, "What do I think of myself?" You stop seeking external validation and move from an inner desire to create, to evolve, to make an impact. Life ceases to be a sequence of reactions and becomes a work of art in constant creation. For Nietzsche, the one who embraces their will to power does not merely live, they create meaning, even amidst chaos. Nietzsche's noblest mission for humanity is not to obey, to please, or to survive. It is to overcome oneself. The Übermensch, the overhuman, is not a superior being in a biological or moral sense, but one who dares to destroy their old self and recreate themselves from their own values, their own truth, their own will. This being is not born complete. They are forged in the crucible of life itself. Every challenge, every fall, every rupture is an invitation to let die what no longer serves and to birth something stronger. The Übermensch does not flee suffering but traverses it. They do not seek applause but create in silence. They need no permission, for they understand that the only legitimate authority over their existence is themselves. Nietzsche saw the common human as one surrounded by invisible walls, fragile moralities, social conventions, inherited fears. The overhuman tears down these walls. They refuse a small life, reject repetition, and need no external why to obey, only a how to create. Your life is not a burden, but a sculpture in eternal transformation. Here lies Nietzsche's hardest and most liberating truth. No one will save you. There is no redeemer, no system, no formula, only you facing the vastness of existence, with the responsibility and privilege of shaping your own essence. The question is not, "What will the world do for me?" but "Who will I dare to become, despite the world?" This is what separates those who survive from those who transcend. To live as an Übermensch is to accept that life is raw, uncertain, tragic, but also intense, creative, and infinitely rich for those with the courage, not only to live, but to create themselves anew each day. This is Nietzsche's final call to shed the skin of the victim, to silence the voices of fear, and to walk steadfastly toward yourself. For when you cease to care for what holds you back, everything begins to align. The truth echoing through this reflection is as simple as it is brutal. The world does not change when you shout, but when you grow silent and act. And the silence of those who cease to care for what does not matter is deafening. The moment you cast off the weight of others' expectations, the norms that confine you, the inherited ideas that never held truth, something within you awakens. You cease to be a prisoner of what is expected and become the author of what you live. Nietzsche's thought challenges us to abandon the mask, the illusory need to please, and to plunge into our own essence. When you realize that life is tragic, chaotic, and without guarantees, you stop waiting for justice or comfort and begin to forge your own path. And there precisely is where everything begins to work, not because the world has changed, but because you refuse to remain small. All parts of this reflection converge on one truth. You are both the work and the artist. Your pain is raw material, your courage the tool, your will to power the fire that transforms all. There is no path without conflict, doubt, or solitude. But there is a strength born precisely when you cease seeking refuge and begin building your own inner home. This is Nietzsche's invitation. Cease shrinking to fit the world. Expand to create your own. Now carry this reflection with you. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, When did I stop being who I am to do what was expected? How long will I ignore my own power for fear of judgment, rejection, or oblivion? Nietzsche did not want you to follow his steps, but to carve your own. That requires a choice to live for others, or to exist as you were born to be. If this message has stirred you, provoked you, or unveiled a new lens on life, subscribe to the channel now, like this video, so its truth may reach others ready to awaken, as you are. And tell me in the comments, what within you must die, so that something new may finally be born. Your answer may be the first step toward what Nietzsche called true freedom.